So you're going to get the goods today. We had Mark Somani on talking all things landscape and construction relates to our industry, because so many times people don't even know where to start. They get scared of contractors that are going to roll them over. They go on Kijiji, hire Uncle Jimmy. He takes their cash and he ghosts them. This guy gives us the absolute inside track on the language, the questions you need to ask, and how to look and approach landscape design. He actually gave 3 very simple tips that you can do no matter what your budget to increase the value of your home. Absolutely loved it. Landscape design has become absolutely crucial in setting yourself apart in this marketplace and is yielding big returns on investment. Absolutely love having these episodes of Prime People on, because quite often you'll also learn things that you can apply to your industry. Yes, he's telling it to you from the lens of somebody in his world. Yes, I'm going to share some stories from the side of a real estate agent and a production company, but I promise you it will help you grow your business, execute, or at least save some money. The only thing that we ask is all this content is free. Smash that subscribe button, jump in the comments, let us know what you think, ask us questions, suggest people or topics for future episodes as we do this for you. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Prime People Podcast, where we cover all things that got us to where we are today, our team building strategies, the marketing and sales tips that we've learned through thousands of transactions, productivity tips, ways to really just hold yourself accountable to accomplishing what you want to accomplish, and all things content creation, personal development, and not to mention we have some of the best guests on the planet.
Mark, we are live. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad we're doing this. I know we have some mutual connections, and I've been looking into your stuff, Blue Circle Contracting, your background in landscape design. I thought it made a whole lot of sense to bring you on and chat with the audience about how somebody like you looks at landscape design, what language they need to be made well aware of so they don't get rolled over by maybe contractors that aren't as ethical. Basically do what I do in my world, in the real estate world, but from the perspective of somebody that has the experience. So, I like to give a little bit of preamble. I know you have a lot of experience in contracting. From what I read, your background, you will go back like 15 years or so. It started in like the 90s. Maybe give a little bit
Correct.
of background to how you ended up here.
I sort of fell into this business, but I've been around construction and real estate since I was about 5 years old. My mother was in the industry, but I started as a salesman for a general contractor at 17. And I just basically was given a bunch of flyers and basically go and find us some work. I knocked doors, and that's how I started my career. And we did everything at that time. We did a complete general package. And then after 5 years, I decided that I wanted to focus in on landscape design, build, masonry, and the exterior primarily.
That's interesting. So you could have come to work for me one day because you're hustling out there, knocking doors. Let's stick on that. So that translates to the audience. I'm sure they're going to get a lot of tips over and beyond just landscaping. What did you learn from your experience door knocking and doing the door-to-door sales for this guy?
When I was a kid, it was vicious. It was a lot of doors slammed in my face.
Yeah.
One of the first doors I knocked on, it was a very uncomfortable situation. I basically had waterfalls behind my ears.
Wow.
And when I was given the position, he said, "You know what? We want you to make sure you give everybody a flyer." I said, "Okay, that's fine." I would knock on doors. I would run away from the doors because I was scared to talk to the people. I was scared of the no's, the rejections.
Sure.
And this gentleman I happened to meet, he was probably about 40 years old, living at home. I gave him a brochure, and he ripped it out of my hands, ripped it up in a bunch of pieces, threw it in my face. I won't continue what he actually said to me, but I took everything, put it back in my folder, and I continued and realized that, you know what, you're going to experience that. And you just have to keep going, keep pushing. Rejection is part of the game, and it's a numbers game.
I agree 1,000%. We were talking with some friends this morning about how other people can't define who you are. Typically that's a them problem, not a you problem. Right.
Yes.
So you started developing some thicker skin. How did the sales go? Like, what did you find was a difference maker in that world in terms of, getting through to some people, even though a lot of them are unreachable?
Knowledge, persistence, integrity, and just keep going. I mean, it was really persistence at that time. I just kept going back and back and back. And then once you start getting a client here, a client there, then your name builds, and, you do a job for a client, a neighbor here, a neighbor there. The ball slowly starts to roll, and you start to develop a name and a good reputation, and the rest is sort of history, but it's still vicious. I mean, now it's different. When I go and knock doors today, I got a lot more respect. But, when you're a 17-year-old kid, there's a lot of people that don't give you respect. And unfortunately, there's a lot of unsavory characters that are knocking doors. There's a lot of guys making a bad name for us, whether it's real estate agents, contractors, door to door, whatever, right?
It is the world that we live in to a certain degree. Is people have an expectation of, what do you want from me, right? And
Yeah.
you're looking to solve a need and a problem. There's a balance of skill that you have versus what you can offer, but people don't know who you are. It is very difficult. We're definitely in the attraction business in terms of how we generate a lot of the business we do. I'd much prefer you work with somebody that knows me, because it's a different conversation once you realize that I don't really need anything from you, but we're better off together. So what was the next transition from, that door-to-door sales to the next iteration of your career, or what made you kind of, go down that masonry path? Was it the artistry? Was it the craft itself?
I think it was a combination of that. And for sure, I saw that there was an opportunity. Plus, the original contractor that I worked with, who's kind of just grew apart. And I knew that that wasn't the right path for me. I decided to go to school at that time. I did a BCom at Ryerson, and started with actually Simeon's brother-in-law.
Okay.
That's how I started when they sort of went on their own. I was their sort of lead generator and main business development guy. And so we went from there. And I went from the sales side to learning the technical side, which was really nice. Learning from Jim and Peter, the technical side. And that's where I really started to hone my craft, because now you're not just the sales guy, you know the technical background as well.
Know how to make the sauce. One of my favorite things to hear in anybody. I respect it, right? It's, if you know how to make the sauce, or the language of what you're speaking to, it's not sales anymore. It's a different thing. So, give me an insight into the technical side of what you did. So physically, what were you doing to enter into that world? And then how did you hone your craft over the years?
I didn't do too much physically. This past year in 2020, I worked about 5 days on the crew, just, working and just getting a little bit more insight. But I didn't do too much physical work in the beginning. I just watched them. I just spent more time. And when you're working hand to hand with the guys that are actually doing the technical work, you learn a lot. It's more about questions and watching. And I learned that way.
So give me the insights into the industry. What are some of the questions that you look for when you're looking at getting masonry work done, and the language that maybe there's a difference between what the general public would know and then what an industry insider like you would be aware of, right?
I mean, I tell people, it's like when I go and buy anything, it's a comfort level. I think it's a comfort level. Speaking to somebody, I think I can display comfort and knowledge, and I never feel like I'm selling. It's more of a knowledge, a solution provider, as opposed to, I don't, there are times where I sort of step on the gas pedal for sales, but more 98% of the time, I'm just providing knowledge and answering questions.
Yeah. And I think the consumers are going through a very different time now, where previously they wanted to be sold.
Yes.
When we were growing up, that was just par for the course, right? It's what's the
100%.
newest, hottest product and what everybody else is buying. Now consumers are very well educated and want to feel that they're getting value and quality. So, how do you view value and quality and product delivery in your field of work?
So just to sidestep that, I just wanted to say another thing. I find that over the last decade, I find that more people are doing their homework in advance. They're not calling me, April 1st and saying, what, Mark, we want this job done in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There's a lot more plan, a lot more prep. The dollar size, the people are spending more money on their homes today, just in general, not just on landscape and masonry, but they're taking the projects a lot more seriously.
We're talking
planning
big numbers
ahead of time.
Yeah, we're talking huge numbers. We see it. So let's dig right into it, because I think there's a ton of value to extract from this conversation. Is, I'm Johnny, the real estate agent. I sell Uncle Jimmy a house. Uncle Jimmy hates the backyard. Call somebody like you. Where should somebody be engaging somebody like yourself in the conversation before they do the research? Should they already have a plan drawn out of what he wants to do? At what point is it valuable for somebody to call somebody like yourself and answer the conversation with you?
I think right away. I don't think that you need to have a design, because there's a lot of times that you don't need a design. A lot of people, I've met many people who have spent $2,000 or $3,000 on a design where, I think it becomes irrelevant, unfortunately. It's something that they've spent that money without doing a little bit more homework.
So let's extract
making
that, because there's language there that I think the general consumer isn't even aware of. So I say design. What I mean by design is I draw it on a piece of paper. Here's my fireplace. Here's my barbecue. Here's this. What you're talking about is a lot of times people will go out and spend a couple $1,000 on professional drawings, engineered to the
correct.
like exact measurement of what needs to be done. So, you recommend, similar to us in the leasing space, engage you early on to know
Yes,
where you're going with your plan, right?
100%. But there's also value in what you said, just to draw something out. If you know what you want, obviously it makes the process a lot easier, and it streamlines it, truncates the time frame. But some people don't know. They want me to come in. They've got a blank slate. They know that I have the experience, so they want my insight. What do I recommend? What don't I recommend? So it can go both ways. But if you
Okay.
do have a baseline of what you want, I think that helps.
Okay, so let's walk through a case study myself. I'm going to look at a property that I can see through my office over here. I'm
Yeah.
calling you. Oh, listen, man, COVID's going on. The inside of the house is okay, but it's feeling a little cooped up. It's starting to get a little nice outside. I need a new backyard, right? This is what I want. I want to do, a stone, like at grade level, nice little patio area. I want an area where I can barbecue, and I want a fire pit with seating in it.
Yes.
Where do you go from there in your world?
I would ask about the space. I do obviously go over budget, because that helps me to get a better sense of what the picture is before I get there. I'd like to know as much as possible. All of the work is front loaded, because once we've done all this work, Justin, you know what you want. I come in, I put together a full proposal, we pick materials, all of that's front loaded, so that once we're ready to deliver, we fire it off. I line up the dominoes and knock them down one by one. So I think I would have a brief conversation with you, maybe 10 or 15 minutes over the phone, to get us a good picture of what you want, as well as get a sense of what your budget is. And then we would meet on site. And in that meeting, we would continue our original conversation. And after we leave that meeting, I would have, for the most part, exactly what I know I need to deliver to you
Yeah.
within whatever period of time.
And it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. The interesting part, and why I asked the question the way I asked it, is, that leads to the next part, where establishing a budget. Because if I don't know, I got $5,000, is that going to cover me? I know it's probably not going to cover everything that I described, but I don't have, say, $35,000 to throw at it, and not necessarily understanding what to expect when entering, say, landscape design from that perspective. Because I'm not even talking about plants. I'm just talking about
Yeah,
stone and masonry
yeah,
work.
just the baseline, just to frame it
How
up.
can a consumer educate themselves on how to establish a budget, so they don't call, again, the wrong landscaping guy and say, hey, I've got $50,000 to burn, and he does something that should have cost 15, right?
I think it goes down to, it's just like a new homeowner versus a homeowner that's bought 2 or 3 times. They understand the process a little bit more. So it all
Yeah.
depends. We get everything. We get somebody that's a new homeowner. We have somebody that's, done this 2 or 3 times. So it all depends on what I find. Somebody that's done this work before has a better sense of budget versus somebody who's, let's say, a new homeowner. For instance, new homeowners, they've bought a place in the beach or in Leslieville. They've never done this. They're coming from the condo world. I find at times the budgets are really a little unrealistic,
Mhm.
and they don't know what to expect. So I think it's about experience itself, actually, if you've done the work before. But if you've given me a space, let's say it's 500 or 750 square feet from that area, and we talk about square footage, even if we start, we've got a patio that's 14 by 20, we've got a staircase, well, it's 280 square feet and a staircase. Well, now we start, that's easily 10, 15K. Then you start adding in a barbecue detail or a fire pit, 10, 15K goes. So the numbers can add up, and I sort of walk them through. I'm an advisor like you, and I listen a lot more than I talk.
Mhm.
So, getting a sense of what they want. I find that you can find out a lot about people on an initial phone call, and what their expectations are and what they're looking for.
I think
I'm sure you feel the same way.
yeah, it's the same across everybody we work with, and all of our partners in different facets. Doesn't matter if you're a mortgage agent, you're in landscape design, you're, real estate partners, like we were talking about with Jazz and Simeon. I'm working with people that understand the language that they're speaking and they're there as experts in what they do. But as a consumer, you don't need to be scared to make a phone call and feel like, I got dumb questions and I don't know where to establish my budget without having a conversation with somebody experienced, right? Because I've seen people, buy 5 or 6 houses, then come to us and they still don't understand the contract because nobody explained it to them throughout that whole
Yes.
process. So, we're similar in that regards where we try and stick to, establishing what their pain points are, what they're trying to accomplish, and how to do that in most cost effective way that is going to give them a return on investment. Now let's spin to that. And, we've established, say, what our budget's going to be for the landscape design. How do you approach it from a value perspective or an execution perspective? Or, I guess, what should consumers know when designing for a property that maybe they may sell in the future? Because they can do gold archways and everything else, and they're never going to get their money back. I'm sure that plays into it a little bit, right?
100%. I mean, yes, you're not going to put a Lamborghini in, not everybody can afford a Lamborghini, nor is a Lamborghini necessary in every property. But I look at it as an extension of your living space. And depending on the property where it is, majority of our work is in the city. So we do a lot of work in Leaside, North Toronto, Lawrence Park, the beach. So everything is in the city. So you're talking about properties that are, 1.5 to 2.5, $3 million. So I think you have to plan and decide according to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's not going to be gold arches, um, but it's really an extension of your living space. It's not just functionality. It's like now this is an entertaining space. I have a bungalow in East York. I look at that space. It's completely finished. It's got lights. It's got vegetation. It's got oxygen. It's beautiful. It's just, and especially during COVID, we need this. We're not going to stay the whole day inside. We're going to come outside. We're going to enjoy the space, and the lights give it that wow factor. The trees give you oxygen. The stone is clean. Everything is finished. So I think there's huge value in that, and it's not even looking at it from a functionality space. You're now taking a home to, you're creating a home and an exterior living space, a warm environment, right?
Yeah, and
That you
it
can
adds to
entertain
it.
it.
We've seen a big uptick from the real estate side, even in home valuations, right? Previously, landscaping, I mean, having it nice and presented mattered for sure in the home sale, but people weren't looking for the outdoor spaces. Now it's a different game altogether because you may have a, 1750 square foot home or 22 square foot home, but then you go outside and you got a 1500 square foot entertaining space or a 500 square foot stamped concrete patio. It changes things quite often. And I do find a lot of homes we see aren't necessarily finished to maximize efficiency in a space. So they'll just have like a
Yeah,
500 square foot slab, uninspired, no vegetation, no lighting, just feels like a 500 square foot concrete pad. How
yeah,
do you
yeah.
maximize space in what you do?
So I'll take one of my projects that we did downtown last year. I mean, COVID changed a lot of things, and I know for the real estate game, it's completely changed. There's a lot more action. People are leaving the city, coming out. Even a lot of our clientele has moved up north. They're in Collywood. They're in the Muskokas. Um, but there's definitely more disposable income. There's this particular client. They, husband and wife, 2 kids. They had planned a long European vacation, which was probably a $40,000 or $50,000 trip. They couldn't take it, so they said, "You know what? Now we're at home. Husband and wife are working at home. The 2 kids are at home. So we have this driveway and this walkway and this porch, and then we have a backyard that's just not really inspiring." And we gave a complete facelift to the entire property. And it started out in 2019 as a $55,000 project, and it went to a $97,000 project because they saw the value. I said, "You know what? In the backyard, we redid a back walkout. It was just basic function. It was falling apart. You could hardly, you walk into the gate and you'd almost fall into the
Yeah.
back walkout." So we changed the layout. We given them a walkway now, safe walkway. And I said, if you're going to do all of this, why don't you extend the patio? Because the patio's old, it's 20 years old, it's outdated. And while you're at it, we're going to add some vegetation and we're going to add some lights. Now that backyard pops completely, and they're entertaining. I would say it's going to go up 3 to 5x for
Yeah.
sure. And they wouldn't have done that before. So, and then the front of the house, We've just given it lights. I changed the stone on the driveway, added a retaining wall, lights, and I restored the natural stone walkway and porch. So I mean, that was more of a functional job, but the backyard, we brought huge value to the backyard, and they're going to enjoy that space. You know, once that's done, they spent some money on some furniture, and now it's like, okay, right away, once the job was done, once the lights were in, David brought 5 or 6 friends in, and they had, you know, a COVID beer party.
Yeah, it's a different world entirely. I mean, people aren't necessarily spending as much money on gas and trips and everything else. They're looking at working on reinvest it. Before, again, like I said, we are very cautious with telling people sometimes you're just doing a renovation for yourself, which is totally fine. Like if you're going to enjoy it for 10 years and you're going to get, 1 for 1 on the dollars you invest, go for it. But it's not going to add, you're not going to put in 10 and get 20 back. It's just not how it works.
Yeah.
But now there are difference makers between going through some houses where you're seeing what you're described as, all the way from entry level, like refacing of stone entryways and whatnot, to go up to the house, because the curb appeal does matter when you're comparing your property versus the other 3 to 5 in your area that are for sale. You stand out. You're going through the house and then opening the back door and being just overwhelmingly surprised at, I'm not even going to be in my house. I'm going to spend all my time back here. Let's throw a hot tub in. It's a game changer, right? And that's why I brought you on, was I wanted to walk that process to explain to people from the entryway, like just refacing your sidewalk going in, fixing your retaining wall. These are little things that you can do to have a big impact, all the way up to a $95,000 deck extension, lighting, vegetation, and everything else to really translate that feel, right?
100%. And I think you could say the same thing. I mean, there's huge value if somebody is to buy a home that's sort of, you put the key in the front door and it's ready to go. There's value there, right? I think there's a ton of people that don't want to do any work, and I would transition that to the landscape space. They would love to have a space that's ready to go, and that pops, that gives it warmth. It's now, an area of connection. There's my backyard. It's beautiful. You sit back there, couches, especially at nighttime, lights pop on. It's just a different space. It's a completely different vibe.
Fresh air and just being outside is amazing, right? We've done a ton of campfires this summer and just, it's been fun. Let's dig into some practical and tactical advice for the audience. If you have a low budget, a medium budget, and a high budget, what are the 3 items that would pop in your mind if, I had limited funds, I had a decent house with a nice-ish lot. Is there anything that you would do first before approaching, more complex projects that are kind of must-dos?
On the baseline, I would do walkway patio areas just to clean up the space, because low maintenance is low maintenance. You don't need to have these busted patio slabs. You can do a precast paver without, blowing up your budget. And I think that there's something to be said. You you replace, let's say we're talking about a baseline townhouse, wherever it is that the builder gives you patio slabs. I think there's huge value in taking out those patio slabs, widening the walkway, getting a side walkway, back patio, new stairs, precast, which is an interlocking product. Again, you can go from low end to high end in the interlock, but that would be a sort of a baseline thing. And then from there, I think vegetation, gardens, and then lights would be the sort of an,
accent. They pop. Accent. They make a huge difference if you do it right. But I mean, if you do the lights first and it lights up a terrible walkway and plants that are dying, probably not the best use of funds, right?
No, the lights are the last thing, and that's we just finished some lights the other day for a client of ours in North Leaside, and we're going to do the rest of the planting and the lights in April. But it's a game changer. Yeah, it's a game changer. Complete. The lights. I would say if you were to pick one specific detail that takes something to a real true wow factor, is lights. And if you have vegetation, the proper vegetation, forget about it. It's a game changer. You make the neighbors jealous for sure, and your house stands out. And then there's other ancillary things too. I mean, if you want built-in barbecues, if you want a fire pit, sheds. Shed is a functional thing. Again, you need to have something like that, but there's other ways to blow up the budget. Hot tubs become, swim spas. Yeah. These are things, but I would say, whatever the stone surface is, whether it's a precast interlocking, pattern concrete, wet lay natural stone. That would be sort of the baseline, and then from there would be plants, lights. That's where I guide my clients to. And if
Yeah.
they
So
want those other ancillary expensive details, we can do that too.
and I guess we don't even need to go through the small, medium, and large, because the same premise across the board. It's just how much of it are you going to do and what's the quality of what you're going to execute. From my perspective, and this is kind of a fun collaboration, when I get the call and they have a house that, let's call it, I don't know, 500 or $600,000 in a
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood where the cap on price is $1.2 million. Go
Mm-hmm.
nuts. You can do as much as you want, because as you add it, there's almost no ceiling of appreciation of value, given you update the inside of your house as well. But
Correct.
if there's a $400,000 house and every single house in the neighborhood sells for $425,000, adding $50,000 in landscaping is not necessarily going to make a house sell for $455,000. So there's a bit of a balance. You probably factor that in, like the neighborhood that the house is in, and styles of homes.
100%. And I think there's, there are some contractors that sort of go geography based, and the numbers change according based on geography. I've never done that. Once you get into certain neighborhoods, the jobs just become bigger. Like this downtown project, we started with one neighbor, then we did the second neighbor, then we did the third neighbor. And it's a long game for me. I don't, we do small jobs. I mean, it's not always ideal, but sometimes that's just what it is. Sometimes we have to take a $5,000 job, but you got to look at what it is down the road. It's not, this is not 6 months or a year. This is, you're taking it in 5-year and 10-year increments.
Yeah, Prime operates the same way. Big or small, we do them all. And we think about, the long-term relationships. And it's funny because I had this conversation with somebody recently, because we sell very nice large properties, and we sell regular properties, and we sell entry-level properties, because that's really, for me, it's the journey, right? From taking somebody from getting into the marketplace to their personal growth and long-term growth of what they do. But we talked about the commission structure of that. They're like, you get paid the exact same amount, a percentage of the purchase price. But it's a vastly different number depending on the sale price of the property. But I'm like, yeah, look at our market now. I could bang out 100, let's call it $350,000 sales in the same time that I'm probably going to do 10 million, $1.5 million sales. So exponentially, the work is actually a lot more on a lot of those larger properties than it is on the smaller ones. For you, it's going to be a net game too, where you're putting in more effort and more work on different size projects and different size neighborhoods. But the cost of goods stays the same. It's obviously going to be your labor costs and everything else. So huge takeaway for the audience is to be aware of who's quoting you, how they're quoting you, and maybe get a couple quotes so that you're competitive, or you at least understand what you're paying for.
Yeah. And I think people make business complicated. I think, you know what? I'm a client. I'm looking for a house. I come to you. It's simple. I'm looking for an advisor.
Yep.
You're going to advise me. Let's not throw in all this additional stuff. And I think one of the things I found with a lot of even sub trades, finding them, just the attitude on some of them, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's just like, really? I know that the market's busy, but the attitude is so unnecessary. And I found in the past, working with some older contractors, just the way that they've treated me, it's just unbelievable. And the respect level they have for me. Some of them will just say, hey, you know what, this guy's just a sales guy, right?
Yeah.
But I don't look at it that way. I like you do at Prime. We build relationships, and I build relationships with my team too, because I'm not able to deliver without my guys either. Whether it's in the office or my trades that are on the field, I can't deliver without them. So it's a full team effort, and you got to bring the right people on site that are also going to treat your clients' homes with respect and your clients with respect.
Partnerships are absolutely key. You touched on something where I've seen it go the other ways, where you'll have building and sales teams that aren't cohesive because one person wants to control every single aspect of the transaction, and they don't let the other person do what they're excellent at. Right? We all know, I've worked with some amazing trades that are incredible at what they do. If that person talked to one of my clients, they'd be thrown off the site in a heartbeat, just because they don't communicate and they don't speak the same language. I get where he's coming from because I've been there, and I can be that intermediary between the two of them to make sure they're still getting value. And when that's the guy that needs to do this job, I don't care about your feelings. You want the best product. Let me manage him. go on a vacation and come back and it'll be done better than anybody else. Because if you
Yeah.
want somebody that's super nice, maybe he's not good at his job. So there is a balance in between the two. I want to, for the trade side of things and for the client side of things, but it's interesting picking the right people and, having respect and being thoughtful in your business is a lot. Touch on this point. How often do trades get to the point where the market's so amazing that they call all the shots, they treat people poorly, and then the market flips because the light switch can happen tomorrow. And then all of a sudden they're looking for work and they're coming back to you and saying, hey, you got anything for me? And, people have very short-term memory when they're working, but, people have long-term memory when they're on the other side of that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Over the years, you learn, and you learn some painful lessons. But those guys that have shown me their colors, I think it's important for relationships to get tested. So there's a little bit of adversity, but some guys, there are lines that cannot be crossed.
Yeah.
And I actually had a call just before Christmas from an old trade. I would never work with him ever.
Yeah, on
Ever.
principle.
It's just, it's just why,
Yeah.
it's just for so many reasons. It just doesn't, it's stressful, right? I'm sure you've had this too.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just that toxicity that comes into your life that I don't need that. Again, making business too complicated.
Yeah. And recently, I apologize for cutting you off. But I've had
No
conversations
problem.
recently with people about your ideal client type, and we're not the right fit for some people and they're the right fit for other people. That guy, I'm sure there's people out there that love his personality, want to work with
Yes.
him, and saying no to business is hard. In our
Mhm.
business, especially, like, our quality and service delivery standard and long game play is set up the way it is. Fits a certain client type. If they just want to hire another agent, there's 1,250 of them they can go hire in the market. If they want to hire me, that's a different conversation, right? So it's interesting for you to get that clarity. And I love that you're saying that to the audience so that they're aware that they're going to go through that path and not to be hard on themselves when they hit adversity, because, tension is required for growth. And, going back
100%.
to your history, what's something that maybe you've learned, or what's one of the most challenging things that you've learned in your business?
You just touched on it. I think for me, if I look back at business, I would say the two hardest things. One is to say no. I mean, saying no just in general in life, right? It can be a challenge at times. And having the confidence to ask for money. When we started to grow, you start going from $5,000 and $10,000 projects to you start escalating, whether it's 20 or 30 or 40, but being able to actually ask for money and having that confidence, that was a learning curve that was painful at times, and hard lessons. You lose jobs, you win jobs, but those two, I would say, would be single-handedly the two greatest lessons. But for sure, being able to say no, because not everybody's the right fit. I'm sure, just like everybody that comes to Prime, they're not the right fit. And I mean, there's some people that I talk to them over the phone that just for one reason or another, just not the right thing. And now we're looking for a couple of new trades for the roster, and I can suss them out in a few minutes. And just sometimes it's the attitude. The attitude blows my mind. The attitude, they just think that they're irreplaceable. That it's hard for me to believe. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And I mean, we look at our business and I'm replaceable. I always
Yep.
think that, right? Is the most humble. The people that act like they have it usually don't. The ones that have it usually act like they don't. And they come from a place of, humbleness and trying to be kind and grow and be an expert at what they do and add value to the relationship. So, that's super, super insightful. I want to give you an opportunity to maybe give a message out to the audience, or if you had a billboard that was out there and you wanted them to know one thing about your industry, that's, say, the biggest myth out there, and bust that myth, what do you think that would be when it comes to landscape design?
It's a
This is a
tough
safe
question.
place.
Yeah, I know. No, I feel very safe. But it's a one thing. I mean, I would do your homework. I mean,
Yeah.
just do your homework. I think just like me. I mean, I don't go out and call. I wouldn't go out and call 10 or 15 contractors. I think some people overanalyze it. I think just asking questions and seeing what your comfort level is with them. I mean, just listen to what that contractor has to say. How are they treating you? What are the questions that they're asking you? Do they come on time? Are they, just some simple things. I don't think that it needs to be complicated. What's your comfort level with them? I think the contractors, it's very easy to get a sense of who they are. I feel like some of them, I don't understand how they get work, the way that they treat people,
Yeah.
and the relationship, or the presentation. I see the way that the documentation is presented in terms of a proposal. I mean, we do a full blown PDF proposal. I'm not putting a quote on the back of a cigarette pack. It's just everybody gets a full blown proposal, and specific details get requested, and whether it's references or we add a portfolio with a presentation. But the presentation and your initial meeting, I think, are key. Just being, don't complicate it. How are they when you first meet them? Because I think for me now, I have a lot of experience, but I can tell within minutes whether or not I would want to work with this contractor or not. That's
Yeah.
how I feel.
Another
Don't
question for you, I
complicate
guess.
it.
What questions would you ask if you're a consumer calling a contractor? This is going to be incredibly valuable. So get your pens out, everybody. What are the questions they should be asking to find out if that person's the right fit?
I mean, I think it's important to know how long they've been doing it, how much experience they have in the specific space that they're looking to do. Have they done any work in the neighborhood? Like, where are they coming from? I mean, I have a home office. I do a figure eight from my office. So,
Yeah.
why contractors are coming to the beach if they live in Hamilton? I think local is important. I think you should, like we talking about support local during COVID. I think you should stick with the local contractors. I mean, I'm not. I have to do a renovation at home. I'm not asking guys to come from Cambridge to do
Yeah.
the house, right? I think local is important. I think it's important to support the local, and that they're going to be in the neighborhood, servicing the neighborhood for the future, long
Yeah.
term.
What
Those
goes
would
around
be,
comes around too, right? Especially
yeah,
when it comes to supporting local businesses and whatnot as well. Makes a massive
yeah.
difference.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go out to Mississauga to do work, or Oakville. It's just it's too much time. You can't travel to do it. I know there's great markets there, but it just doesn't make any sense. I was told many years ago sort of to keep a sort of a leash on the kilometer radius. So I followed those rules, almost implicitly.
Nobody
So
told
I
me
think,
early on in my career. I remember driving 3.5 hours because the file seemed like a good one. But now we only
yeah,
expanded to areas that we have an expertise in, both from a local level. So we'll hire people that are in that actual market, have a history of family history. They understand the streets to be on. Crucial in your market as well, too, who their suppliers are, where their products coming from, what their ability to actually hit their timeline looks like. Are they giving you very short timelines when it's probably not realistic, right? I think these are all red flags that people could watch out for.
yes, and also to touch on that, it is timeline, because if you're hiring a contractor that's, let's say, whatever, 50 or 60 or 70 kilometers from your home, you want to tighten the timelines. And I think a lot of projects get the timelines get blown up way too much. And we try our very best to sort of keep timelines truncated. We're on top of communication. If there are delays, it does happen. We're communicating with the clients, but I think that's one of the problems when you hire a contractor that's out of district. You
Yeah.
lose, some control over the timelines, and I think that's important, and hopefully that's good insight for your followers.
Yeah, it's amazing. I appreciate it. You gave a ton of value in this episode. I want to give you a little bit back. Where can we drive people to follow you and message you if they have any questions regarding you? Obviously, if they're in their area, they can hire you as well. What platform are they best to reach you on?
My website, bluecirclecontracting.com.
Okay. So we'll send
And
them
then
down there.
yes.
Awesome. I definitely appreciate you coming on, brother. It was a great conversation. I learned a whole bunch, and I'm sure we'll be talking more in the future.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Justin.
Okay. See you, Mark. Take care.
All right, see you, man.